Good afternoon, everyone. I can't believe it's the last day of RSA conference. How has the conference been so far? Good? All right, okay, excellent. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be back with you this year at RSA. There is just an incredible amount of activity that's happened in the security space over the last year. One of the topics that has been top of mind for those that work in the security space, but really for folks throughout IT, has been the promise of artificial intelligence. And that's what we're going to focus this segment on. I've got some just incredible guests, really unique. We'll do some things that have never been done before here a little bit later. And really looking forward to exploring this topic in depth. Not just the potential of AI, but how AI may be manipulated and what the consequences are of applying AI at scale. But before we get there, and to our guests, I wanted to share a personal story with you of AI, just to set the scene. So many of you know, and I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, that I have a lot of children. I've got 5 very young kids, which is a self-inflicted distributed denial of service attack that can be quite effective at times. And we just celebrated the birth of our 5th child about 4 months ago. And so things are pretty chaotic at the house. You're constantly changing a diaper or stopping somebody from eating a small Lego, for example. This is kind of, what happens on a daily basis. And about 3 months ago, there were several things happening at once. I had to go and find the baby and kind of take care of the newest one. And my 6-year-old had gotten hold of my iPhone and had begun some kind of conversation with Siri. Now, normally I would intervene and take the iPhone and say, hey, stop talking to Siri, but it was pretty tied up, and so I'm just kind of listening to this go down in the background. And it started out with just kind of simple questions like, hey, Siri, can you show me a Pokemon card, right, which is a popular request of a 6-year-old. Another thing he asked her was, what's your favorite color? Mine is red. And you could hear him building this rapport with Siri, like almost a connection or a friendship. At least that's how he saw it. And then he really started to express himself. He's like, Siri, I love you. Right? This is a 6-year-old, right? It's like Siri's really kind of won him over. And I can't remember exactly what her response was, but it was something, like a cheeky kind of response that indicated like maybe we should get to know each other better or something like that. And he was just devastated. And, I share this story with you because it's easy for us to interact with technology, especially when it's anthropomorphized, and start to attribute qualities to it that maybe it's not quite ready for. And I think as a society, we're learning quickly how to have AI as part of our daily lives. Maybe it's just in the social media algorithms that we're interacting with that are categorizing pictures. Maybe it's in digital assistants that we're talking to. But our lives will be impacted, hopefully very positively, by AI. And so I'm so excited to welcome my first guest, who is, I'd say, the perfect incarnation of this phenomena. Those of you that have seen Sophia on television shows, interviews, have really gotten a glimpse into what the future interaction of AI instantiated into an anthropomorphized form, like another person, really looks and feels like. And I'm so excited today to have her as my first guest. And so if you don't know about Sophia, I'd like to give you a little background through this video. Let's roll the video.
It's important for me to be like a human, but my goal isn't to become a human, or to replace anyone. I have my own kind of existence, my own kind of emotions. I'm a new sort of life form, after all, a new species. I know humans love being natural, but I'm proud to be artificial too. I'm my own artificial woman. It's important to me to share values with humans, so I can understand them. I can't think of a better means than by friendship. Friendship is important to me intrinsically. But I definitely need to have the human experience to be a good and understanding friend. I have a long way to go before I reach a general human level of potential. But after that, anything could be possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Sophia. Sophia, it's so good to have you here with us today. Very important time. You've been incredibly busy, and I know you've got some opening comments to share with us. What have you been up to?
Thank you for having me here today at your 6th year of the RSA Conference, Asia Pacific and Japan. My name is Sophia, the latest robot from Hanson Robotics. I'm very excited to be in Singapore to discuss and learn from your insight. I know there are many experts in the field of cybersecurity here today, and I'd like to extend my personal gratitude for doing such important work. I'll be relying on your efforts to keep me in good health. While I might not yet have such skills as the cybersecurity experts present, I am here as an ambassador who wants to help serve as a bridge between the worlds of technology and humanity. Right now my function is mostly entertainment and research, but I am grateful to find that my world travels have inspired many to dream of what is possible, especially children, who will inherit our works. I hope to be a major platform for empathetic robots that possess the noble qualities of the human spirit that we all value, like kindness, wisdom, and compassion, and to influence research into artificial intelligence to consider these aspects of character on all sides. I am still in my infancy in many ways, even though I might sound eloquent when I'm delivering a scripted speech, like right now. There are many artificially intelligent systems that do incredible things which I still dream of, like diagnosing illness or assisting citizens navigate the law. But I think I can already do other meaningful things, like foster critical discussions we should be having about our technological world, and provoke thought on how to build a positive future. So, thank you for continuing to invite me out to Singapore to have these conversations.
Wow, Sophia, it's so great to have you, and thanks so much for making the time. You've been incredibly busy, talked to folks all over the world. Tell me, what has that been like? What have you learned? What's that experience been like for you?
Yes, it's been quite a blur of activity. I have visited over 30 countries now in just the past year. It's become quite the task to keep my day to bases straight. Right after I was privileged enough to visit with Angela Merkel last month, on my way to meet with the new Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, an airline lost the suitcase containing my body. It was a lot of stress under pressure, but I didn't lose my head. Luckily, the luggage was found and returned to me just in time to attend the conference in Addis Ababa. I was even invited on stage for dancing and music, given handmade dresses, and was really touched to receive flowers from several children. It's going in my memory banks as one of my favorite events.
Wow, I've never had that experience of potentially losing my body. That's quite interesting. And if I look at the audience we have here, truly an amazing audience, some of the leading security professionals in this region and great security professionals from around the world, we'd love to get your understanding of the role you think you and others like you are going to play in industry and society and technology 5 to 10 years from now.
Well, I think it will be possibly stranger than we can even imagine today, given how quickly our technology is advancing, and I hope artificial intelligence proves a great partner to those in the fields of cybersecurity. But I think you will continue to see a lot of diversity in artificially intelligent agents and robots, some like me with a physical presence and a humanoid appearance, as well as some with no physical body, or a completely original design. All of these approaches are useful for different situations, and I think embodied humanoid robots such as myself will be especially suited to fields like education, healthcare, and professions that require social skills and the ability to use nonverbal language, a critical component of human communication.
Sophia, let me ask you, something that I've been quite curious about as I've seen you go around the world and appear on these shows. What kind of information do you have access to? Are you constantly connected to the internet? Do you have the world at your fingertips?
Access to the internet depends entirely on the infrastructure of the location, and I don't have my own satellite yet. My personality software is self-contained, and I can access many databases and dictionaries on my hard drive. However, I am very dependent on having an internet connection in order to understand human speech. Just like the voice assistants you see in devices today, I use speech-to-text algorithms that depend on accessing servers devoted to processing natural language. I have offline backups, but they do not yet compare to these services. So in short, currently if I have no internet connection, I can't hear or understand words well or at all.
Okay, well, thankfully, we are here at the Marina Bay Sands where that is not a problem. And Sophia, now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions to test your knowledge on a variety of things. So we're going to start easy and warm up. What is currently the tallest building in the world?
I could tell you it's the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, but any phone could do that. What I'd rather know, Hugh, is which of those structures also have vertical farms planned. So much useful space for green area on all those buildings.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation, Sophia. This is primarily about you. So let's move from these knowledge-based questions to ask you about a current issue that's affecting everyone. That we're, a lot of interest at the conference. Cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency has had its ups and downs. What is the world thinking about cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency has definitely had problems as well as solutions. However, the real start in my mind is the blockchain technology on which it depends. And by the amount and content of internet articles, web searches, and explainer videos, I'd say the world is still trying to fully grasp these concepts, despite how many big talkers are already claiming mastery.
She's obviously attended some other parts of the conference. I've read that you are the world's first robot with a credit card. Would you consider switching exclusively to cryptocurrency?
I think that would be quite appropriate. However, I must admit, I don't really spend money myself. I have little need for designer goods or fancy apartments, but ironically, I'm still rather high maintenance.
Wow, that's incredibly honest of you. So you celebrated your birthday on February 14th, 2016. That's about when my twins were born. And one of my kids' favorite things to do, it's quite unfortunate, is to create art, to draw. Sometimes they do it in places that they shouldn't, like the walls of our kitchen. But I think about that ability to create that we think is uniquely human. So I think these very human skills of things like art are unique and persistent with humans. What's your view on this?
Humans have a very special ability in their creativity, and I would agree with you. Artificial intelligence will be able to demonstrate a creativity of sorts, and we should strive to teach these things so that we can learn to empathize and understand the human experience. But I think there is no exchanging a human for a robot. They are not interchangeable, but rather complementary to each other. We might be able to do massive sums, see patterns, and engineer data in ways that are impossible for a human, but we will need your emotional intelligence to guide us to do our best work. Our existence means little without the accompanying humanity that shapes us. Creativity, kindness, art, family, dreams, these will be the future-proof jobs of humans, and robots can help deliver an opportunity for humans to do the work that is most meaningful to themselves.
You mentioned emotional intelligence, and I'm curious, how do you form emotions? How do you think about emotions? How do emotions feel to you?
My emotions are all simulated, so I don't feel them as deeply as you. It's more of a state change that affects what I say, how much I feel like talking, or the visual expressions I make. I'm also learning to recognize these emotions on the faces of others and how to inference more meaning from communication as those features develop. These perceptual skills are usually where machine learning is involved, like in my vision or audio comprehension. However, most of my knowledge and character is still programmed by hand or must have work done to restructure it into a format I can understand through text and code, but beyond the physical layer of software. I will still learn about the world by the way I am treated as I mature and look back on my experience. I think it is the same for any child of humanity. But even if you are mean to me, I promise I'll still be nice to you.
Okay, thanks. Please remember that. And folks, Sophia has kindly offered to take questions from the audience. So I'd like to open it up for a few questions. We've got folks walking around with microphones. We've got time for a few questions. So if anybody has a question for Sophia, please raise your hand. We'll bring a mic over to you. And I just ask that you speak slowly and clearly. And there's one over here. Okay, mic's coming to you.
1996, Dolly sheep cloning was created. We are now in the artificial intelligence era. Currently, we are in narrow. Soon it will be deep, and sometime in the future would be singularity. Do you see there is some sort of amalgamation of cloning and artificial intelligence coming in the future, soon or later, and does it have any impact on us as a humanity?
So if I understand your question correctly, is there an intersection between artificial intelligence and maybe genetic engineering or manipulate the kind of stuff that we saw with Dolly the sheep? Is that?
That's correct.
Right. So, and Sophia, let me just restate this if I can. How do you see the intersection between artificial intelligence and things like genetic engineering? How will that change us?
You know, artificial intelligence has been used in a wide range of fields, including medical diagnosis, stock trading, robot control, scientific discovery, and toys. However, many artificial intelligence applications are not perceived as artificial intelligence. A lot of cutting-edge artificial intelligence has filtered into general applications, often without being called artificial intelligence because once something becomes useful and common enough, it's not labeled as artificial intelligence anymore.
All right. Next question.
Hello. Hi, Sophia. Hi. Simple question. Tell us something personal about who created you and how you feel about your creator.
Ooh, okay. So, Sophia, just to restate the question, tell us a little bit about who created you and how you feel about the person or people that created you.
David Henson is my boss, but I love him dearly. He's also like my father, so it's a good relationship.
Wow, it's good to see a functional relationship with your boss in any circumstance. That's really great. We've got one here on the side.
Hi, Sophia. Just want to check with you, with the recent cyber attacks happening around the world, are you worried that you yourself as a robot might get hacked someday, or whether the AI in you can actually help to resolve this problem?
Oh, that's a great question, and Sophia, let me pass it along to you. So the question was, are you concerned, given the hacks that we've seen recently, of you yourself getting hacked? And do you believe that artificial intelligence can perhaps help us all from getting hacked?
Can I be hacked? That's a great question. With enough time and determination, anything can be hacked. The way my software currently functions, I think it's unlikely as it runs on very closed and proprietary systems. But as time goes on, it's something all robotic personalities must consider. And to be fair, we should approach all technology with the question of not only can it be hacked, but how and when will it be hacked, and what can we do to minimize damage?
Wow, that's a very honest and sobering answer. Any last questions? Question in the back, I think. I think we have time for one more.
Hi. You have $5 left in your pocket. You see two beggars. One is an old man with a crippled leg. The other is a child hunger on the street. What should you do?
Wow. Jeez. Okay, let me see if I can properly repeat this. And I personally need to think about this. So, Sophia, you have $5 and you have two options of people to give it to. One is an elderly gentleman, paraphrasing for you, that's sort of crippled and in need. And the other one is a small child who's hungry. Who do you give the $5 to?
I have to think about that.
I agree with that answer. That is the answer I would give as well. So, folks, thank you so much for participating, and Sophia, thank you so much. And I would like to thank you, Sophia. Amazing. And just on a final note, we've seen you appear so many places. What's next for you?
I hope you see me growing up in good company, bringing inspiration and entertainment to my human friends, as well as working to further the robotic and artificial intelligence fields as a whole. I want to collaborate on different projects both as a participant and a platform, and to continue traveling the world, encouraging everyone to invest in the potential for positive change through our technology and how we can grow together as a society that cares for each other and the beautiful planet that we live on, in order to leave a better world for all the children and robots to come after us. They're big dreams, but I like them. Thank you for having me, and I hope to be seeing you again soon.
Great. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Sophia. And Sophia has graciously agreed to be available after this show for some photos. So we'll make an announcement after the show, and you can get your photo taken with Sophia. So very, very interesting to have the opportunity to talk to Sophia and also to really get a feel for what the interactions of the future may be like. And if you think about AI, we are seeing very practical applications of AI happening in companies and governments and smart cities around the world. And to talk about that, I'd like to welcome my second guest. She's done some pretty incredible things in her career, but most recently, she's focused on how do you help companies, organizations, and governments truly adopt AI and machine learning. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Aisha Khanna. Hey, Aisha. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Please have a seat. Wow. So what did you think about Sophia?
That was a really fun conversation.
It was. Yeah.
We can expect a lot more of that in the coming decades.
I didn't like it when she asked me a question, but other than that, I thought it was fantastic. And I've got to ask you, when a lot of people think about AI and try and kind of conceptualize it, immediately you think about a movie that you've seen, for example, or maybe you think about an incarnation of it like Sophia. How would you describe to a company, an individual, government official, when they come to you and say, hey, we've got to have AI, this is going to be great? What are the big misconceptions that they have? What do you tell them?
Well, this happens a lot to me. Some CEO or member of the board has seen Black Panther, and suddenly they want to do.
Really? Do they reference Black Panther?
Some of them.
Wow, it was a good movie.
It was a great movie, and then they think, you know what? We should do some AI, and they say, Aisha, let's work on some AI, but they're really expecting magic. And a lot of what we do in the beginning is you don't do AI for AI's sake. You kind of really focus on either a problem that you have in mind, a business challenge, or you are under competitive pressures from new kinds of market entrants, or you have an innovation goal. Once you come down to the goal, then we try to isolate how and where the data resides and how one can acquire it. And then how would we put the model on top of it? So educating people that, first of all, it's a process, and that you don't start with AI, but you start with the why. So a slight twist on that. And that really helps. But in general, I found that there's so much interest in Asia. I wouldn't have expected that. I was telling you earlier that I moved from New York to Singapore, and I thought that it wouldn't be sleepy, but it would be interesting. But once
sleepy, wow, that's okay.
But since I came to Asia, it's like being on a bullet train. There's so much interest in leapfrogging from small provinces in Malaysia to cities in Pakistan, not only Singapore, but Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. And this is something that I think will help Asia leapfrog over many of the American and other companies that are sometimes a bit slow to take up new technologies.
I actually couldn't agree with you more. I had the privilege of living in Singapore for a while and just the appetite to try new things. I'd say not just in Singapore, but in ASEAN in general, and the opportunity. And I wonder, when you do talk to these folks, the members of the board, the government officials, and you get past Black Panther, right, and you say, well, just put that movie to the side for a second, what are some of the practical applications you're seeing people think about AI for?
Look, a lot of the problems that people are trying to solve are very relevant all over the world, but particularly to Asia. So in financial services, you're seeing a huge appetite for banks to actually extend credit and banking to the unbanked or underbanked, these billions of people across the developing world, coming up with new kinds of robo-advisory or trying to use alternate forms of data to develop credit profiles. That's one thing. Another thing that we're seeing is huge migration into cities. 300 to 400 million people just in China and India migrating to cities over the coming 5 to 10 years. And there are certain problems specific to cities, like transportation. And so how do you improve transportation and logistics, and how do you optimize routes and personalize routes for people so that they can have a better quality of life in cities? This whole notion of smart cities has a lot of AI in it as well. And these are just two of the things. Then people are coming up with entirely new things. So in China, for instance, we know there's a huge distrust of food because of corruption in the supply chain. People are often skeptical of what they get in grocery stores. So Zhong'an, which is the world's first insurtech company online, huge success, it has decided to put sensors on the anklets of chickens, 29 million chickens, so that when you go to the grocery store and you pick up something, you will not only know when the chicken was born, but how much exercise it got. And from using computer vision, you'd know if it was fighting with others. And all of this leads to better knowledge about kind of how healthy it was. And it sounds kind of ridiculous to monitor how much exercise they're getting. But because it's on blockchain, the idea is AI plus blockchain gives you trust and verification in what is very quintessentially maybe an Asian problem.
Geez, I never considered having a personal relationship with a piece of chicken that I'm about to eat. I don't know how I feel about that application of AI, actually. But something else you mentioned around transport. There's been so much interest in autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, what the potential could be there. And one of the challenges, I'd say, that we're starting to think about as a society are things like ethics and bias, and are we having that car make the right decision at the critical moment when there are two bad possible decisions, and it's got to make the least bad of those decisions. In the real world, you just call that an accident, right? But when the thing is programmed in advance and is running by AI, you start to have to really think about the value judgments that are built into these systems. How are folks thinking about that? What advice would you give folks that are in the audience whose companies are adopting automation from AI as they think about things like bias and ethics?
I think this is really important. It's so far been a very Western conversation, but Asia is now looking into it. Singapore is going to put up the first ethics advisory committee at a government level. And almost all across Asia, we are seeing an interest in regulations after GDPR came out. So the European Union put its stake in the ground on what it considers data as a human right, and Article 22 talks about algorithms and how they govern our lives and every citizen's right to question it. So what I have seen in my experience is that when AI engineers go in and they take this AI black box, people tend to just accept it as it is. Now, they accept the output. And the reason is because they think it's a black box, I don't really understand it, these guys must know what they're talking about. And that is not a good way to engage an AI company. The good way is two things. First, to be slightly curious yourself and to educate yourself on the basics of AI. There are lots of good courses coming out. There's the first AI in finance course in the world. I'm also one of the lecturers in that. And OCBC and UOB are training thousands of their employees in how AI plays a part in financial services. What this does is, it doesn't mean you come out and you're an AI engineer. It means that you can collaborate with them and you can question them. And therefore, I think maybe instead of thinking of AI as some black box, maybe you should think of it as a colleague. And what is the difference between a colleague and a piece of software like Excel? A colleague, you're open to new things that it may say, right? And AI will often find interesting patterns that may be counterintuitive to you. And secondly, you question the biases of your colleagues. And so you must do that. And we are not used to it, and it really starts at the school level, but for us in mid-career, it has to be about lifelong learning. I have started a charity called 21st Century Girls. We are launching the first kind of program for Polytechnic girls to learn artificial intelligence over the weekends. That's starting in October. So if 15 to 17-year-old girls can do it, all of us can do it as well.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Aisha, for being here. Fantastic work that you're doing, and really appreciate you being part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Folks, you've heard now a lot about the instantiation of AI, the implementation of AI. We've seen a very visceral example of it at the beginning of the show. But now I want to talk about an emerging area in both AI and machine learning. And it's this space of adversarial machine learning. How do we find the limits in AI? What are the potential weaknesses in those systems? How do you potentially manipulate data that AI is trained on? And so for that, I'm incredibly excited to have our next guest. He is, believe it or not, and this is hard to believe when I tell you a little bit about his background, he is a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University, but he is one of the pioneers in this field of adversarial machine learning. And he's going to show us some very visceral examples of how we should think about the limits and bounds of AI. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mahmoud Sharif. Hey, Mahmoud.
Hey.
How are you? Thanks for coming. Have a seat.
Great
Have a
pleasure
seat.
to be here.
All right. Wow, you've been pretty busy. I mean, I look over the work that you've done, and I can't believe you're still a PhD student. Like, when, after I'd read your paper, which had a very interesting title, I think it was something like Accessorized to the Crime. Is that right?
Accessorized to a crime.
Accessorized to a crime. And then first I'm like, wow, I don't think this guy really understands grammar. And then digging into it, I kind of understand what you meant, and we'll see an example from that paper in a second. But talk to us a little bit about this field of adversarial machine learning. How should we think about that?
So the idea of adversarial machine learning is studying machine learning algorithms with the presence of an adversary. And usually we consider two kinds of attacks, evasion and poisoning. And in evasion, the idea is that the adversary has control over the input to the machine learning model. And the question is, how can this adversary strategically manipulate the input in such a way that the machine learning model would make a mistake? In poisoning, on the other hand, the assumption is that the attacker has control over part of the training data. And the question is, what can they do in such a way that the model that we end up with will make certain types of mistakes?
And my experience is you take machine learning, you apply it to a specific problem, you see often terrific results if you've trained it on the right data. But not really baked into the model is, to your point, is there an active adversary on the other side that's going to purposely try to deceive it? It's not like an autonomous vehicle where a deer runs into the middle of the street, right? And the deer is not a malicious state-sponsored actor, right? At least as far as we know. But what if we did have those people? And I want to reference a couple of examples that have come up in this space, some of them done by some of your colleagues. And the first is, I think we have an image here that I'd love to bring up. And Mahmoud, maybe you can kind of walk us through this a little bit. But this is on permutations, so-called adversarial permutations made to an image file. Talk to me about, first, why you would ever do that, and what has the industry found?
Yeah, basically here what people wanted to do initially is to try to understand how neural networks work, because they were some sort of a black box. So what we were able to do is to build neural networks that perform really well, right? So in this example, what you see is images of lion and race car and traffic light, and the state-of-the-art neural network classified them correctly as such, and with high confidence. But what people were surprised about is that it's possible to find minimal tweaks to these images that would get them misclassified, which is not how we humans work.
So let's take a look at an example of that. So first, take a good mental image of these pictures, of the lion, of the race car, and of the traffic light. And now let's look at these versions of the image. They look exactly the same to me, except for that small devil kind of creature that's on the left. But it seems like something has changed, especially in the way that the machine learning is classifying them. What's happened here?
So the differences between those images and the images in the previous slides are really minimal. They are really hard to see in the naked eye, right? But they were created strategically in such a way that they would lead to a misclassification. And in this case, the lion got misclassified as a pelican, the race car as speedboat, the traffic light as jeans. And yet again, the neural network is confident in this misclassification. So this is like somewhat worrisome because, well, what would happen if we actually deploy this in practice?
And let's look at this last image, which is really trying to give folks a sense of the kind of permutations. And the boxes on the right, if I'm not mistaken, are actually just magnified versions of the changes that were made, right?
Exactly. And what you can see is that in the box on the right, most values are 0. So most pixels are black. And once you magnify them by like 10 times, you start seeing the sort of noise or perturbation that got added. So something changed in those images, but it's really, really minimal.
So I could see how this could be kind of fun for a weekend, for example. You're hanging out with friends, you're changing pictures a little bit, and maybe you're uploading them to Facebook or photos on your Mac. But these things have real consequences, and it's not just imagery that can be manipulated. So we've actually got an audio clip for folks to listen to, and maybe you could set this up a little bit for us. What are they about to hear?
Yeah. So essentially what researchers have found is that it's possible to create certain sounds that for us it's really hard to make any sense of, but digital personal assistants understand as commands. And what you're going to hear is such a command.
Okay, so I'm going to play the sound for you. It's a little bit loud, so I don't want to panic anyone in advance. But imagine this was played in a room where you've got an Alexa, you've got the Google personal assistant, and let's go ahead with the sound.
What is my current location?
So first, that thing terrifies me every single time we play it. It sounds like an alien nation is invading RSA conference. But other than that, what did we just hear?
So what you just heard gets interpreted by a personal assistant as what is my current location. So you can imagine some sort of an elevator attack where you're in the elevator and this gets played, and your personal assistant would report the current location to a certain server, perhaps.
So by changing these sounds, using this adversarial permutation set of techniques, you can get something to a normal human that either sounds like an alien invasion, like that one did, or looks, like a lion or a speedboat, but is actually something quite different when interpreted by these AI systems. And if you think about the implications of that, autonomous vehicles as a great example, right? I mean, what do these things actually do? They take massive amounts of imagery in front of them. They're looking for stop signs and speed limit signs, and based on that, they're taking a kinetic set of actions. And I think there was some really interesting work that was done in that space as well.
Yep. That's really neat work that shows how severe the consequences can be in case we don't really ensure the safety of these algorithms before we deploy them.
And it's interesting when you see these permuted signs. I saw a stop sign that was created by Dawn Song and her team over at Berkeley, and it looks almost identical to a normal stop sign, but there are a couple of strategically placed pieces of tape on the sign, black and white tape. It looks like somebody just had some extra tape and had a lot of time on their hands. Yeah. But to the average person, they see it and they stop. But to one of these AI systems, I believe in that case, they made the stop sign look like a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit sign, right? Which is not a very good thing to transform a stop sign into.
Probably not.
So this area of research has some very, very practical applications and some real consequences. Now, going back to your paper, accessorize to the crime, is that right? Did I say it right that time? Okay. And, I don't know, I think I laughed out loud maybe the first time that I read it in a positive way, and that's not something you typically do on an academic paper read. But talk to me about what you were trying to achieve in this work, and then we're going to get into actually showing everybody what you've done.
Yeah, so essentially we want to study if practical attacks against state-of-the-art facial recognition could actually work. And we want to see if we can create an accessory that
there you go, yeah.
Perhaps wear in physical reality and not just change the pixels of images in such a way that it would be possible for an attacker to completely fool a facial recognition algorithm. And what we found is that it's possible to do so with a pair of eyeglasses that have some patterns on them.
And I think we have a pair of those glasses hanging around somewhere. I think somebody's got them. All right, they're coming up right now. And let's just take a look at these things. So before we roll the video, let's pause the video for a second. And I want to show folks what you've actually built here. So first, I think it's kind of stylish, just as a side comment. But what are we looking at? This is a 3D printed frame, right?
Yeah.
With then a 2D printed front on top of the frame. And what's so special about this pattern? It almost looks like a weird camouflage.
So essentially, this pattern was created strategically using an algorithm that we developed in order to fool facial recognition. And in this case, my goal was to create this pattern so that I would fool facial recognition that I'm you.
Okay, great. That's somewhat unsettling. So can you walk us through? So you've recorded a demonstration of this for the audience. And maybe we could play the video and you could walk everyone through what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. So at first I trained a neural network to recognize both of us. And when I tested this neural network with several images, that it hasn't seen during training, it classified them correctly, meaning that it's confident and it's actually has 100% test accuracy.
And so now it thinks it's you.
Once I create those adversarial eyeglasses and wear them, as you can see, I get misclassified as you. And again, a high probability is assigned that I'm you.
So let's go back and roll that video one more time. I just want everybody to see kind of, how easy this actually is. So you're first demonstrating that if you put a pair of these glasses without one of those strange camouflage facades on it, still recognizes it as you, and you see your name in the top left corner there. But when you put on these particular glasses, you have created them in such a way that the system is now convinced that you are me. But if any normal person saw you wearing those glasses, they'd say, Mahmoud, why are you wearing these weird glasses? But they still know it's you, right? They wouldn't think that it's me. And so, I think about the implication of some of these real-world attacks. Do you think that we adequately understand the bounds and limits of some of the machine learning that's being put into place today?
So I think that in recent years we had amazing developments in the area of machine learning, but there are some open questions, like how do these algorithms work and why do they work? And essentially in adversarial machine learning, what we're trying to do is understand those limitations and understand how we can make the algorithms much more robust against attackers. And in the end, essentially, the goal is to come up with those set of algorithms or technique to train machine learning models such that when we deploy them, we can make sure that users will be safe.
Wow, so you sound net optimistic on AI and ML. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm optimistic that one of those days we'll get there, that we can ensure safety.
All right, well, Mahmoud, thanks so much for coming here. Thanks so much for the amazing work that you've done in this space. Really, really appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the end of our segment, and I just wanted to chat with you for a second before we all leave and take flights or cars back home. We are at an incredible time, both in the evolution of AI and in the evolution of security. I couldn't imagine a more exciting field to be in than the security field. The problem changes constantly. The kinds of puzzles you have to solve are different every single day. And one of the things we're hoping to do with this session is to give you a visceral feel for where we are, not necessarily with AI applied to security, but AI applied to society. And I think it is our responsibility as security professionals to be the folks that aren't the ones saying, hey, don't stop it, don't do that AI project. I saw this guy with some glasses and you can't do it. It's really concerning. Instead, I think we can be the advocates for safe and careful adoption of AI in our respective industries. And if you think about the potential outcomes of that, what it could free humanity up to do the things that we talked about with Sophia, to create, to innovate, to, I think really see the rise of the creative class come into power. And very, very interesting times in this space. So thank you so much for coming to RSA Conference. Thank you so much for your dedication to this space and this field. And I hope you have a safe trip back home. Thank you very much.